Everyone for joining us tonight on Trenton Talks, our Trenton Board of Education TV radio broadcast. I'm your host, Gerald Trueheart. I serve with my colleagues as a board member on Trenton Board of Education, chairing the Family and Community Engagement Committee and Policy Committee. I'm joined by our co-host, Denise Crease, who is our parent liaison and homeless liaison parent coordinator for Trenton Public Schools, as well as our past president, Addie Daniels Lane, as well as our board member, Jean Bowie, who's the operations chair, Jeannie Weeklam, board member, our chair of our facilities and buildings and grounds committee. And also we wanna make sure we thank our board president, Yolanda Manero Lopez, for her guidance and support and her leadership, as well as our board member, Denise Johnson, for her support and on the policy and also on the Family and Community Engagement Committee. Of course, our superintendent, Mr. James Earl, for his leadership and commitment to our district and for his leadership and for his stalwart efforts to make sure that we have students who are academically performing in all, as well as in all areas of their life. And so I welcome you to Trenton Board of Education TV radio broadcast. Our sponsor, WIMG 1300 AM, and our sponsor, Verizon Channel 28, WPHY. We thank them for sponsoring us on Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. on IMG and 11 p.m. on Thursdays on our TV channel, Verizon Channel 28, which is WPHY. And so tonight we want to give you a board update tonight around our budget process and around our budget. And I want to ask the first question to Addie Daniels Lane to go over our overall budget process and some of the things that we've been working on in terms of the budget and working along with City Council on the actual budget process for the FY 22-23 school year. Addie?
Okay, so good evening or good afternoon, everyone. Certainly it's my pleasure to join with you this afternoon. As the former board president, I recently gave an update at the City Council meeting to explain where we were budgetarily and, of course, to ask for their support in the budget process because their support is critical. And so at that time, I shared some facts regarding the budget process. And the fact is that the process for the following year actually starts in October, November. And so this budget process started in October, November of 2021. And it culminates in, again, in March of 2022, where we are supposed to meet as a Board of School estimate, the board president, the board vice president, city council member, and the mayor, as well as our board secretary to actually confirm and okay the budget in terms of the city's contribution. And so that meeting was held in March, and at that particular time, the mayor signed off on the budget, which was estimated to be $419 million, of which we were asking that the city contribute $24.2 million. And at that time, the mayor signed off on the budget, the superintendent, myself, the board vice president, as well as our board secretary. However, city council members did not sign off on the budget at that time and have not yet to this date signed off on the budget. And so we're kind of at a standstill in terms of that particular piece. If you think about it, $419 million is our budget, but the majority of that funding comes from state and federal funds. As a matter of fact, it's about $357 million that comes from the districts, comes from the state as well as the federal funds. And so the city's contribution is actually just a small portion. It's a small portion, but a significant portion. Mm-hmm. And so it has been said that this particular budget is actually a 2% increase that we're asking from the city, 2% increase. And so that 2% increase is an increase above last year's request, right? So that 2% actually, so that 2% actually amounts to $475,000, $475,593 more than we requested last year, right? So that is the request. And last year's request was $23,779,000, excuse me, $23,779,665, right? We'll have to put this out in writing. And so again, it's a minimal increase, despite the fact that someone has said that, this is a significant increase. It's not. It's a minimal increase. And the minimal increase that we're talking about is, again, 2%. So if you think about it, the last bill I got for taxes said that the district's allotment was $1.06 of every $100 of property assessment. $1.06, right? So that's the portion of your taxes that goes to the school system. $1.06 for every $100 of assessed value of your home. And so that 2% means that the increase is now from $1.06 to $1.08. So your taxes now would be $1.08 per $100 of assessed value. So if you think about it, it's a minimal increase rather than a significant increase. Okay, and so I think our taxpayers need to understand that last year it was not a problem in terms of giving up, and I'll just round the number, 23 million. This year we're asking for $24.2 million. And again, what that's going to do is add 2 cents per every $100 of your assessed property tax. And so that's where we stand in terms of the facts, right? That's what it means to you as a taxpayer, as a taxpaying citizen in the city of Trenton. An extra 2 cents per every $100 of value assessed on your home. And so again, when we think about this, and there were some concerns expressed about the amount of money that goes toward salaries, right? And so in terms of that particular piece, we have to remember that the district is a service provider. And as a service provider, you need people in order to give or provide the service. So in order to provide the services that are needed by the district, you have to pay people. And that's a wide variety of people, including, of course, there are our bus drivers, there are our paraprofessionals, there are our psychologists, our learning consultants, our parent liaisons, our guidance counselors, our nurses, our custodians, our technology staff. All of those people provide a service to our children. And in order to get those services, we have to pay them. And we have to pay them a competitive salary, because if not, we won't have staff, right? So we have to be competitive in our area, which of course is Mercer County. We have to pay them a competitive salary. We already know we have challenges in terms of certain positions, in terms of hiring. And so if we don't offer a competitive wage, we won't have the staff to provide the services. We service 18,000 students, and we directly employ 1,620 staff members, all of which, again, have to be offered a competitive salary in order for us to keep them as employees so that they can provide a service to our children. So again, when you look at the district's budget, or if you look at the budget of almost any corporation or even the city that provides services rather than producing goods, the majority or a large portion of the funding is going to be devoted toward salaries, because that's the only way you get the services. So if you look at the city's budget, you're going to find the same thing. If you look at another district's budget, you're going to find the same thing. That in order to provide a service, again, I have to say it again, you have to pay people to provide the educational services that are needed for this particular district. And so that's basically where we are. There were some concerns about charter school funding. We don't determine charter school funding. The state determines charter school funding based on the enrollment of charter schools. There's a certain amount of money that comes through the district and goes directly toward charter schools based on their enrollment. So what happens if they say that they have, and I'm just making up a number, let's just say they said that they had 2,000 students, right? And then when the end of the year rolled around, they only had 1,900 students. Well, that following year, the district would get reimbursed for those 100 students that were not there. That happens the following year. And that's by law. That's how it's set up by law. We don't determine the amount of charter school funding. If new charter schools ask to come on board, we can express our opinion. The fact is that it takes dollars and cents away from the public school system. So we as a district can express our opinion. We can ask the state not to approve those charter schools. But again, ultimately, it's the state's decision. The state decides on the amount of funding based on the enrollment. If in fact their numbers don't amount to the enrollment that they say they have when the end of the school year rolls around, the district does get the money back, but it gets it back the following school year. So that is the procedure in terms of that. There was also some concerns about special education. But again, special education funding is determined by the state. And of course, the numbers of students that we have in special education. And so we do have a number of students, and I think the number is actually, and I actually have the number somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. The number of special education students, 2,659 students are in fact enrolled in special education. And in fact, they have certain needs that have to be met by law. And certainly in terms of us, we have to meet those needs as expressed in an IEP. Have there been some challenges in the past? Yes, there were challenges in the past. There was a point where there were 26 open cases. And if you figure 20% of 2,600, that's 10%, right? Those are children, however. That was a 10% area where there were some concerns. Right now, we've addressed, as a district, we've addressed those concerns. The 26 number is the highest number we had in the last 4 years. Right now, that number is down to 3. So there are 3 pending cases where there are some disputes involving the provision of services, but only 3 remain out of 26, right? So our special education students are having their needs met. Does everyone agree for the most part on how those needs are being met? Not necessarily, but there has to come to a point where there's a compromise in terms of what's best for the student, what's best for the parent, what's best for the district, and all those 3 factors determine the actual services that the student will receive. And so again, challenges, yes, but the district is continuing to move forward according to a plan. We have a strategic plan that was developed not just by board members, not just by school employees, but by the community. And that community included different community groups, various organizations. It included individuals who were just interested in the future of the district and how they could help to shape the future of the district. So there is a strategic plan, a 5-year strategic plan. We have a superintendent who's concluding his first year. He walked into the strategic plan at the end of the process and was updated by our outgoing superintendent at that particular time. So we are moving forward with a plan, not just willy-nilly, but with a plan. The goals of the district, the goals of the superintendent are all tied into this particular plan. And again, it's a strategic plan. It's posted on our district website. The budget is tied into that plan. And so again, the district is not operating all willy-nilly. There is a very specific focus in terms of where we're trying to go. And we need the community's support to make this happen, and specifically the support of the council that needs to approve that $24.2 million that we asked for to actually not supplement, but augment our budgetary needs. And so that's it in a nutshell. I may have missed a point or two. So if I missed something, certainly you can go back and ask me, because I'm trying to pull it all from my notes in my head. So if I missed something, certainly you can go back and ask me, but that's it in a nutshell in terms of where we stand.
Thank you, Addie, for a well-versed and balanced approach to how our budget process works and the situation that we have with City Council right now with this 2% increase in our tax levy. A couple of things that I wanted to share, and I want to ask Jean Bowie the next question, is when you look at the fair share that the city should be paying the district, I believe in my last count was about $40 million dollars that the city, the fair share of the city, they should be paying $40 million, but for the last several years, I think in the last 10, maybe more, there had been no increase in the tax levy. but under Mayor Jackson was the first year in many years, over 10, maybe 20 years. Don't quote me on the number of years, but I know it was many, many years prior to Jackson coming into office, that we began to get a 2% increase above the prior year's allocation of taxes to the district to operate the school district. And just one more note, and I'll share a question with Gene, Mr. Bowie, is 2% is the minimum amount of tax levy that all districts across this state are by law allowed to increase their budgets by 2%. And that is without voter approval. I know that we are under a board of school estimate right now, and they have an opportunity in the board of school estimate to approve the tax levy. But I want to make a clear note here that in most school districts, our outlier school districts, if they do not go over a 2% tax levy, there is no vote for that. They can operate their school district and receive the funding from those townships or from those cities to receive those dollars without any vote from voters or from city council, because it meets the statutory requirement of a minimum increase, or what they call a tax cap of 2%. So I wanted to kind of make that note, because I think folks need to understand the dynamics of the budget, the dynamics of the taxes, and how much we can increase the budget. And so my next question is to Mr. Bowie. In terms of our strategic plan and the alignment with our overall budget, I mean, based on our strategic plan and based on the superintendent and our business administrator's recommendation to us as a full board and to the operations committee, which is the house of the budget process, did you see an alignment between the strategic plan and our overall budget for fiscal year 23?
Yeah, so there is clearly an alignment. So the strategic plan was established last year, and that strategic plan not only drove the 2022-2023 budget, it drove this current year's superintendent or district's goals. And so there's clear alignment between what the district, the community, the parents, the stakeholders said that they desired for the district and our work, right? And I just want to go back and mention something that you said earlier. I've been on the board for 6 years, and the funding formula dictates that the city ought to contribute, I think it's $42 million. And the city has not contributed that $42 million yet. So if you use that $42 million and we're only going at 24, that's $18 million that the city is not contributing. But people should be aware that the school district has not pressured the city for that money, because we know the condition that the city is in, that they can't afford to make that contribution. And so the 2% increase over, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a homeowner. I think most of us on this call are homeowners in the city. And so, we're here doing the work, and we're willing to contribute, not just because we're willing to contribute, because our children deserve a quality education. And if you look back, what people don't pay attention to is we've consistently made progress year over year over year over year. This strategic plan is the culmination of the years of work that we've done. And I just want to throw this out. And so many of the parents might recall that in 2019, the school district actually purchased the 9th grade academy, a state-of-the-art building. It cost $20 million. The taxpayers didn't pay a dime, and the school district carries no debt. There is no liability on that. That's a great equity position. But that's what happens when you have a plan and you manage your dollars, right? They say cash is king. Spending that money wisely so that you can educate the children and invest in the children are our most valuable asset in this city. And if we can't invest our money in making things different for them, and it's not just for the children for today, it's for tomorrow's children. We got, I happen to have, at the time I got appointed, I had 3 great daughters in the Trenton public school system. One is still there. The sacrifice and the work, first in my mind, is those babies. One is in the 5th grade. So she's going to be in a school district for 7 more years. That's a big deal. So I hope I didn't rant. It's time to get off my soapbox, but this is important work, and people should be aware and ask the questions. Go to the district website, look at the strategic plan. If you go to the Board of Education site on the school district's website, it's listed there. Look through it. Oh, thank you, Denise.
Yeah, Denise is
Yeah,
pulling it up. Gene,
it's right there.
I think
It's important.
that's important work, right? And one of the things that our past board president, Addie Daniels Lane, went to city council after the Board of School Estimate meeting, and we had 2 no-shows. I want to make sure we recognize that point, that the Board of School Estimate is made up of the board president, the board vice president, the mayor, and 2 council representatives. At that Board of School Estimate meeting is where the vote on the tax levy is done. After the budget is crafted, after the budget is developed, after the budget is approved by the board, it goes to the Board of School Estimate. And at the Board of School Estimate meeting, as Addie so eloquently shared earlier in the broadcast, at that Board of School Estimate meeting is where the vote on the tax levy is approved. We must note that 2 of city council members who are representative of the city did not show up. The board president of the council, as well as the liaison to the board, did not show for that meeting. And that's a significant to us, because that shows lack of commitment. It shows lack of care for our city and for our educational system to not show up and cast a vote. I do want to say that it did pass the Board of School Estimate, correct, Addie? We did pass it through the Board of School Estimate.
Well, we passed it, but again, without the approval of the 2 council members,
yes,
it's at a standstill. Even though we have approved it in terms of the other parties, we need signature from council, right? And so right now it goes to the county and state department for them to figure out the next course of action in terms of getting the dollars and cents from the city. But, I don't like to, denigrate anyone or anything like that. But you're right in terms of, if in fact the board members show up, the mayor shows up, the superintendent shows up, how is it that, our elected officials don't even bother to show up?
That's the point. It's important. That's an important civil service. That's my point. And it's one thing not to show up. It's another to show up and say no. And I think you have to show up. If you're going to say no, then show up and say no and be accountable. That's the key for me. Want them to be accountable to the process. And for me, and not bad mouthing anyone, but to me, they weren't being accountable to the process of members of the school Board of School Estimate, which is so important to the health and vitality of our school district. And I just want to share that you did go to a city council meeting and lay out the framework. You laid out the framework. You laid out the process of our budget process. You laid out how money is being spent, how it's being allocated, how it's being aligned to our strategic plan. I think you did an excellent job of sharing that information with city council to share with them the reasons why we need the $24 million, $24.2 million to operate our district.
Mr. Trueheart.
And it's so very important. I want to just one more question. I got to send the question to Jeannie. Jeannie was actually at the Board of School Estimate meeting. What was your take on that meeting, Jeannie, after our board president, our past president, Addie Daniels Lane, shared that briefing with the city council?
There were comments made from the dais that I think people may not understand that. One of the comments was made that $80,000 is too much to pay a teacher. That they don't understand that, they don't come in at $80,000. That's years of steps that is agreed to in the contracts with the teachers that they get to that. And to me, $80,000, I don't think is enough to pay a teacher.
Right.
But they've got misinformation that they spewed, and it hurts the residents. The schools are the most important thing in the city, and really getting them turned around. And we're working on it and we're making improvements, but they have to support us. And, not signing off on the tax levy shows that they don't support the children of the city if they're not willing to fund the education system. And it's such a small part. It's only 6% of the total budget. So that's all I have to say about that meeting. But
I have a quick question, just so that the audience and everyone that's learning through this process with all of you, what happens if this is not resolved and it does not get approved? What will then happen with our plans that have been put in place? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So I'll start, and then someone else can actually jump in. And so I'm just going to say this, that I am an advocate for the children of this district, advocate for our staff, advocating for the district as a whole. I don't have a chick or child in the district at this point in time, but the district, for the most part, has allowed me to do a number of things in life. And so I want to see the district be able to provide opportunities to the students of the future. And so that's my commitment toward trying to help the district. So in terms of this piece, without that $24 million, like I said, it's 24 out of 300 plus, right, to make up the $419 million. But that particular piece being missing, we can function for a while without it, right? But when push comes to shove, when we need that $24 million to continue paying the salaries, to continue putting gas in the buses, those kinds of things, continue to buy the supplies that are needed, there's going to come a point, unless the state obviously is going to have to force the city to do what it needs to do, right? And so up until that point, as I said, we can make it for a little bit, but after that point, there could be potential, and I hope this is not the case, but there could be potential layoffs, there could be potential cutbacks in services, there could be potential cutback in materials and supplies and things that are needed. And so again, it's very, very critical that we get the approval of the tax levy, or the state says to the city, you got to do it. And so, if the state says to the city, you got to do it, then, they have to do it. But they can drag their feet and make this a long process, which again, will lead to us having to cut back on certain things or even lay folks off. And certainly that is not where we need to go at this particular point in time. Our students need more services rather than less. We know that there's a lot of trauma and the trauma is increasing daily. And part of what the school has to do is support children under these traumatic conditions. We cannot do it without funding, because again, the funding supports the people who provide the services for our students. So that could be the potential impact. That's not where we want to go, but that could be the impact.
Yeah, if I could add something to that. So for the parents that are on this call, if you look at the budget yourself, it clearly outlines the things and where the money is going to be spent. So it's important that you actually see where these dollars are going in the programs, because the worst thing that we could do is, Sister Addie talked about this trauma-informed and addressing the trauma, and the psychologists and sociologists, counselors, would be to start programs. And because you run out of money, then you have to stop the program. So you know what I mean? That's a scary thought for me, because you're providing services that you're going to have to stop, it doesn't change the need. It's even worse that you start something and you can't finish it. So I just wanted to add that note, that you don't have to guess. The one thing about this district, and I'm so proud of, is that we're transparent. You do not have to guess where the money is going, what it's being purposed for. So that was all I have to say. I'm sorry.
I want to say one thing when it comes to the trauma-informed schools. I think addressing this issue is critical at this time. When kids suffer from trauma and PTSD, their minds aren't open to learning. You know, we have to work on that and heal them and heal the teachers. Everybody's been through this pandemic the last 2 years, and these kids have seen a lot more than they've needed to see in life. And we really have to focus on that. And it's important to have the funding so we can do these programs. You know, we've implemented them and we're getting the ball rolling and developing them that, and, you know, hopefully to see some really positive results, both academically and emotionally in these kids. But we need to heal the kids.
Yeah, I mean, my son is at the high school, so I have a child in the district, 11th grader, going into his senior year at the high school, and I don't want to see any cuts to any of the programs at the high school level, whether it be in the CTE programs or any other specialized programs that we have at the high school, whether it be in cosmetology, whether it be in the area of communications, whether it be in STEM, which my son is a part of that small learning community, and in other communities, restaurant and business. So we can't afford. In other words, we can't afford. I know I can't afford for any of the children, including my son, to go lacking in any area. And that's the significance of this contribution to our budget. Yes, it's 6%, but it's a substantial 6%. $24.2 million is nothing to turn your head towards. It's a substantial amount of money that goes a long way in supporting and filling the gap for our district, for our budget, and to be able to deliver those services that our children so desperately need. There's mention of trauma-informed care. There's mention of mental health and support in that area, social and emotional learning. So coming out 2 years out of the pandemic, many of our students are still dealing with some trauma, and many of our students are dealing with mental illness. Many of our students are dealing with social and emotional challenges that we need to support, not just in that area, but also in the academic area, because if they can't function socially and emotionally, it impedes their ability to learn. And we want to do everything that we can. And I really petition the council members to stand up and to reflect on the decisions that they are making at this time that impacts not only my son, but all of the children in our district. And it's so very important that we rectify this $24.2 million question and get this resolved and get this money paid, this tax levy paid to the district. Yes, I'm a taxpayer, many of us are. I'm prepared to pay it, pay that tax because I know it's very important to the success of our district and to the success of our students. Addie?
And I was just going to say, absolutely. As you noted that, you know, we're taxpayers. It's not like it's taxation without representation, right? That we're asking the citizens of Trenton to pay a tax that we're not going to pay, because that tax increase is going to come from my taxes as well too, as a homeowner. And so I'm not asking anyone to do something that I am not going to have to do myself, right? And I say it's not me, but as a representative of the district, however. But again, we are all, you know, we have to be residents of the city of Trenton, and we are homeowners. I think everyone on this board is a homeowner. And so, you know, in terms of that, the taxes the increase in the tax levy, and it's been said again, is going to impact all of us, but we're willing and more than willing to take that small hit because it's important for the district's forward movement. And so again, you know, And these are just the facts, right? This is not a, hypothetical. These are the facts, right? In terms of how many employees we have, in terms of the number of children that we service, in terms of the numbers that go into the budget. Do we have some challenges in terms of academics? I will be the first to admit we have some challenges in terms of academics. Are we working hard to address those challenges? Do we have a strategic plan? Are we working with learning loss? We are doing all of those things, right? Withholding dollars from the district is not going to help any of that, right?
Right.
It is not going to help any of that. The only thing it can do is hurt all of that, right? Because again, potential reduction in services or reductions in materials and supplies that are needed to also provide those services. So it's not going to help, and it's not going to make a point. If you withhold the dollars, it's not going to make us make a plan. We've already made the plan, and not just us, with the community. We have made the plan to move us forward. So that's there. We have a permanent superintendent, which we haven't had for like 2 years, since 2019-20. We've had, interims. We have a permanent superintendent who is committed toward forward movement of the district and working to see that we surmount, or that we overcome those challenges and move forward academically. We know that we want all of our students to be successful, right? We know that a large portion of our students are successful. However, we have another large portion that are not successful. And again, that's no secret. That's there. We can examine the information and you can see that. However, taking money away is not going to make us better. It is not going to do that, right? Or not giving us the money that's necessary to provide those services is not going to make us better. So again, it's frustrating because again, you share the facts and then folks say, well, what facts? All the facts that I just gave you, right? All the facts, not hypothetical. These are the facts. So they are what they are. And that's all that I can say. I mean, if you don't see the facts, and if you don't want to understand the facts, I just don't get it. I don't know where we go from. I don't know where we go from here other than forced compliance. And that forced compliance has to come from the state.
Addie, don't go to Jeannie and then back over to Jean in just a few minutes. Just want to make a comment. I'm sitting here. We need, right, a partnership with the city council, right? We need those who are going. I'm going to give you an example. We need those who are going to do this, right?
Roll up the sleeves.
We need folks that are ready to do this, ready to roll up their sleeves, right, and get into the work that's required of our district and work with us in our district as board members, as council members, as superintendent, our great superintendent, Mr. James Earl, under his leadership, our mayor, Reed Gutierrez, under his leadership, and come together and work through any challenges that council members or anyone else perceive based on, like you said, Addie, the facts, and nothing but the facts. That data tells it all, right? So Jeannie and Jean, chime in here. I mean, are we ready to roll up our sleeves? Or I know we've done that, but why would they deny money from the children and not roll their sleeves up and come to the table with solutions to the challenge that we have?
So let me just say this before Jean jumps in. So I mean, we did the outreach as a district.
Yeah.
We outreach to the council president. We outreach to the council liaison to say, come to the Board of Education and let's sit down, even before the Board of School Estimate. Let's sit down and we can go over the budget with you. We can go over what it means, what it looks like, help you understand it in case you have questions. If you have questions, ask them now. We did the outreach. Come, sit down, let's have a conversation. They came to that meeting. But again, if you had questions, if you had concerns, express those concerns so we could work through it and you can be prepared to address it in the Board of School Estimate or before it actually gets to the Board of School Estimate. We heard nothing other than the fact that, well, I'm concerned about the amount of money that we pay for services. Yeah, but we have to pay competitive salaries, right? I have concerns about special education. Yes, we did have issues in the past. Most of those issues, except in 3 cases, have been addressed, right? Charter school, we don't have any say in that. The state tells us how much to pay. So we answered all those particular things. Now, the one thing we cannot do is go back and take back people's salaries, right? Because we have contracts. We have
That's
union
right.
negotiated contracts. So we can't go back and say, well, okay, the city took back money, so therefore we're going to have to reduce your salary for next year. We can't do that, right?
That's
so
right.
Contracts have us, locked in, as they should, because we have to protect our workers as well, right? And so contracts have us locked in. So we can't go back and say, well, because you don't like the salaries, we can't go back and start chopping salaries. It doesn't work that way. So I'm done. I had to say that.
Yeah, so something that was mentioned. So I've been on the board for 6 years. This is my 6th year, and I've had one permanent superintendent in my whole 6 years. Well, now Mr. Earl is the second one. So just think of that. We now have a permanent superintendent. So that means that leadership has the potential to be stable now. And I just, I'm almost speechless that folks who say they support the city and won't support the children. And I want to make this plain. So we purposely offer competitive salaries because we want our students to have the very best teachers. And so we want to retain the very best. We want to attract the very best. And you put your babies in the hands of teachers. Don't you want them compensated well? I mean, the logic of not paying teachers is irrational. We pay entertainers and sports people very good salaries, but people have a problem with compensating the people that we give our children, our most precious, to. I think that's a problem. And anybody who has a problem with that, I have a problem with them. Our children are worth that. And, and what's really troubling is, like Brother Gerald said, if you wanted to say no, why didn't you show up and say no? Not showing up. That's the coward's way out. So I'm sorry to your parents. It's really frustrating because we sacrifice a lot of time to do this work for you and your children. I mean, a lot of time. It's all volunteer for us. And we volunteered for years, and we meet 5 or 6 times a month just to try to ensure that we've established our plan. Now we have to work the plan, and our role is oversight. And so we don't run the district, the superintendent does. But there is a partnership and a relationship between the superintendent and the school board, and we have oversight to that. And so we sacrifice a lot of time to try to get this right. Trenton has not all of a sudden become a low performing district. It's been for decades. And we finally have our curriculum aligned with the standards that our babies are going to be measured with. That's a big deal. The staff is finally getting real professional development around understanding standards and connecting the standards to the learning that occurs in the classrooms. This is a big deal, folks, and you need to make some noise to your public officials, because this is a travesty that people won't support the education of their children. And that's my wrap, because I could talk about this for hours, and I'm behaving. I'm behaving and told Brother Gerald I wouldn't cuss, because sometimes this stuff makes you want to just cuss,
Speaking of cussing.
What you start, G?
Here's my take on it. Because I go to every single city council meeting, and I have for the last 4 years. And what I see is there's dysfunction between the council and the administration, and council's goal is to make sure that the mayor is not successful in anything he does. Part of the thing the mayor has done is appointed school board members that are knowledgeable and well-rounded, that understand, the goals that the one goal that we all have in common is that the kids come first. And if it isn't good for the kids, we're not going to do it. But they don't see that. Their thing is not to see the mayor succeed. And unfortunately, I feel they're doing it on the backs of our children. You know, they're hurting the kids by not approving this. And parents need to go to council because it's your children in the district that are being affected by them failing to sign this document. You know, there's no reason for them not to sign it. You know, it's within the 2%. The state is going to tell them they have to sign it. You know, the state's not going to come back and say, oh, you guys need to cut this 23 million out of your budget because we are within the state regulation with the 2% cap. They're not going to make us cut back. So they need to sign the document, and quit playing games with the kids. It's just not fair and it's not right. And parents really need to speak up and get involved in your kid's education. It's the most important thing you can give your child is an education. It's known that it's the way out of poverty. And we've got programs in place for these kids that they can walk out with a career when they're done with high school. You know, no other district in the area can do that. No other. Princeton can't do that. West Windsor can't do that. Only Trenton can your child come out with certification for a career. And so I think it's really important that, this document gets signed and council quits playing games. It's just not right.
You know what,
and that's all I have.
Jeannie, I want to just address and come right back to you, what you mentioned about parents. I mean, I'm sounding the alarm. I'm a parent, and we actually got two most recent, right, grandparent with Jean Bowie, and a parent with me, Brother Trueheart. So we are sounding the alarm, and at the line, ready to roll up our sleeves. We already have. You see them already rolled up, and we've already done so, and we've already reached across the aisle, like Addie mentioned, to City Council to bring them to the table, to have conversation, to have discussion around the importance of the education of our children, to answer or to ask and get answers to any questions that they may have about the budget or the budget process, to listen to any and all suggestions, recommendations to changes to the budget. And to this date, I don't believe that we've heard anything about any substantive or substantial recommendations from the word council president or the liaison to the board about any recommendations.
Brother Gerald,
to the process.
They've never been to a meeting. They've never come to a board meeting.
They have never. And in order to make a recommendation, you have to look at the evidence of what is. So if you haven't looked at the strategic plan, which is driving the budget, and then made those connections, how can you? I mean, it's ridiculous that you would say no and you haven't effectively evaluated the strategic plan. Remember that. So parents, you're on this line. Go to the website, look at their strategic plan, look at our budget because there was a budget presentation that was done publicly. Look at the budget presentation on the district website so that you know where the money is gone, so that you know what the plan is that the district has for the next 5 years for your students. It's important. I'm just going to ask a question here. I haven't seen a strategic plan from the council or the city administration yet.
Right. Gene, I think that echoes right to ours, right, to our strategic plan, and those 5 critical areas. 1, student achievement. 2, community engagement and partnerships. 3, developing the whole child. 4, staff development and well-being. And 5, facilities, infrastructure, resources, and safety.
Right.
And so, Addie, can you speak to us about this? How our budget is wrapped in our strategic plan, and how it's so very important for all of us to come together and make this happen. Addie?
Yeah, so let me just say this. So the strategic plan was, and I've said this before, and I have to say it again, is not something that came out of my head. It's not something that came out of the superintendent's head. It was a collaborative effort between community members, parents, administration, board members, and it was open to anyone to actually get involved. And there were a series of meetings throughout the city of Trenton to actually figure out what our issues are, right? And then how do we refocus ourselves so that we can address those issues? Now, I'll use the point in terms of facilities, right? I'll just use that piece. So in terms of facilities, we know that, a lot of our facilities are older facilities. And so they need certain things to actually happen in those facilities. Things like, and Jeannie, you could even speak to this, things like air conditioning, right? And so, looking at the buildings and bringing in air conditioning, we already put in air purifiers in every building, right? In every classroom. But we need to be focused in terms of putting in HVAC systems where we can, because some buildings are just too old. You can't do the HVAC system. All you can do is put in window units in classrooms. So those are the kinds of things that we incorporated into the plan so that these things, and we can use some of that, the ESSER money and ARP money to help make those things happen. Older schools like Franklin, Washington, Robbins, those schools are being, I think the word is retrofitted, so that our children can have, an environment, a climate that they can actually learn in. Because if it's too hot, you can't focus, you can't learn. And so part of the strategic plan is retrofitting our buildings so that they are more supportive, that they create the environment where children actually can learn and will want to learn, right? So facilities, upgrades are tied into that particular plan. Then we're talking about academics. There is a movement toward professional learning, not just professional development, but professional learning for all staff, focused around things that staff members have identified that they need help in, right? Because a lot of educators may have gone to school 30 years ago, right? And so sometimes you need these refresher courses to remind you of what you learned 30 years ago, right? And so you have some of that stuff buried in there that needs to be pulled out again, and you light the fire again. And so there's professional learning that has to happen. That's in the strategic plan, right? So all of these things, taking a look at our curriculum and making sure that our curriculum is continuously updated. In order to do that, you need people to do that, right? So the curriculum doesn't update itself. You need people to look at it, to look at the new mandates that they're having. Like there's a new mandate about Asian Pacific learning, right? And so how does that get into our curriculum? Well, we need people to do the research to pull in the ideas that go into our curriculum. There are mandates that the state develops that we have to be able to address. And so again, it takes people to do that. And so our strategic plan looked at those areas that you mentioned, facilities. It looks at the academic piece. How do we support our teachers who support our students? Do we need new materials, right? And so certain books have to be updated. You cannot use books that are more than a certain amount of years old. I think it's 10. It's either 5 or 10, right? So that you cannot use books that are 5 or 10 years out of date. So all of that work has to be done to see which books have to be cycled out. And books aren't the same as they used to be. A lot of times our books are actually online, right? So we may have a hard copy in the classroom, but our students may have access to the books at home through the internet, right? And so again, this requires a whole new look about technology, right? So how do we make better use of technology? We had to do some quick learning during the pandemic, right? And so from that, there are certain things that we figured out, well, you know what, we really need to really focus on our technology, because who knows where we'll need to go in the future in terms of that piece. So all of that, those were things that people were talking about. How can we best make use of these things that we had to learn because of the pandemic? How do we keep those things moving us forward? So I don't know if that kind of answers your question.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Yeah, and so
I'll be
I'm going to
interested
add, can I just add one more point here? Because Addie just brought it to me, right? So I don't know if you parents know this, but the Department of Education measures us, the school district, on curriculum and learning, finance, human resources, facilities, and there's one last one.
governance.
Mr. Hughes, what is it? Governance, right? Governance. And so I get really jazzed and excited because prior to 2019, on curriculum and learning, the school district scored 29% on a target of 80. Last July, we were at 70%. And so when you think about that kind of progress is around curriculum and learning, this plan actually just builds on that kind of progress. I'm really excited because we are clearly moving in the right direction as a district.
So
And
Denise,
now-
based on everything that's been shared, any comments in the chat or on Facebook Live, or if you had any final?
I did check Facebook to see if there were any questions, not at this time, but if I do happen to receive a question, I will certainly send that information over to you. And you mentioned and talked about a lot of things that people are going to have to digest and process. So I'm sure we're going to have questions later on, but we are reaching close to our hour.
Okay.
So we're going to have to kind of wrap this up. And
Okay.
Before I turn it over, back to you, Mr. Trueheart, I just wanted to share, because we were talking about home ownership a little bit. ISLES is actually having a program on June 15th from 6:30 to 8:30 if you're thinking about buying a home. So I think it's going to be great to take advantage of this opportunity. And I just wanted to let everyone know that our social media coordinator has been working on putting community updates. So I'm sharing my screen really quick so you can see up at the top, once you go to TrentonK12.org, where it says community, if you click on that, you will see some updates. Now, this information on home ownership I just got today, so it's not available yet on the website, but it will be. And all the things that we have been sharing over the course of the last month and a half is up here. So please, if you want to be informed, not only for school events, but we're trying to incorporate community events as well. Also, the Mercer County Youth Services Commission will be having a minority concern committee, a boys forum, on Saturday, June 11th from 9 to 2 p.m. In 1471 Prospect Street in Ewing. So I will share all of this information with Ms. Glennon so that she can post all these community updates. And of course, last week we mentioned the event with the Awakening that's being spearheaded by the Trenton Public Schools superintendent and lots of other support staff to pull together a series for our youth that are males that are 10 to 15 so that they can become more career ready. So more to come on that.
12 to 18.
12 to 18. There you go.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry,
That's on June 18th.
Saturday, June 18th at Trenton Central High School. And there's a registration link that I will drop in Facebook once we close out our session.
Oh, thanks, Denise, for those announcements.
You're welcome.
And I want to thank our past board president, Addie Daniels-Lane, and chair of our operations committee, Jean Bowie, chair of our facilities, buildings and grounds committee, Jeannie Weeklam. Thank you so much. And our co-host, Denise Crease. Thank you, Denise, for your support for our radio broadcast, Trenton TV. We're on tonight at 7 p.m. on WIMG 1300, which actually last week's program will air tonight. And that was on student attendance, our Billboard program with Stacy Heading. We had also Dana Williamson from Kilmer, as well as Talia Stoddard from PJ Hill, and a host of students were involved, and also the climate teacher was there on the call as well. So stay tuned at 7 o'clock tonight, WIMG, and then of course again on Thursday via TV on WPHY Verizon Channel 28. So we thank you. We'll be back with more exciting news and information around Trenton Public Schools and the Board of Education. We have many, many things to share with our community, information to share to help inform, to help educate, and to help inspire to get involved with the educational system of our students in the district. So again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Everyone have a great night.